Senators pick their leaders. Northern Elders Forum won Shetima against the imposition of 10th Senate President. President Tinubu signs students' loan bill into law. The Federal Ministry of Agriculture urges Nigerians to stop the consumption of hides, smoked meat and bushmeat over the outbreak of anthrax disease. And outside of Nigeria, South Africa's African National Congress, ANC, expels former Secretary General Ace Magashule from the party. And Malians in the Ivory Coast mobilized to vote in a new referendum. Tonight in Politics HQ, I will be joined by Senator Seye Ogunlewe, an APC chieftain, is joining from the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. And I have right here in our Lagos studio, George Eke, a legal practitioner and public affairs analyst. I am Gbenga Aborowa. Stay with us, Politics HQ. We'll be right back. June 12, 1993, a watershed moment in Nigeria's democratic history. As one of the most peaceful, freest and fairest elections in Nigerian history was annulled. The day became a point of note in national reckoning, as it has now been set aside as the Democracy Day to commemorate that story in Nigeria's democratic sojourn. A lot of things have happened in the last 3 decades, with 24 years of democratic governance experiences then. Yet, it remains a critical point of note in Nigeria's democracy and one that reminds the nation of its journey. Joining me to discuss the Democracy Day and the commemoration of the June 12, 1993 is Barrister George Eke, a legal practitioner and a public affairs analyst. I also have the pleasure of having Senator Seye Ogunlewe, who joins us live from the federal capital, Abuja. A warm welcome to you both, gentlemen, and thanks for joining us in Politics HQ. I would like to start with Senator Ogunlewe in Abuja. Senator, how significant is June 12 as Democracy Day in Nigeria? And what role did MK Abiola play in the country's democratic journey?
Well, thank you for having me. It was a very important event in Nigeria when our brother, our father, Chief MKO Abiola GCFR, was elected in the most, what you can be regarded as the fairest election ever, because it was option A4, where you lined up in front of the picture of the candidate and you are counted on the spot and the result announced on the spot. And after the aggregation of the result, it was clear that Chief MK Abiola won that election. But because of internal wrangling and over ambition, bolting ambition of people in the military, they truncated that democracy. And it was the worst part. It was a sort of watershed in the political history of Nigeria. Only God knows how far Nigeria could have gone by now, 30 years after, if the military had allowed Chief MK Abiola to assume office and then govern us as he promised. And one must give a lot of respect and admiration to those people who stood against the military at that time. It was not easy at all. One can imagine the type of election we had now, and it was all democratically and fairly done. At that time, it was not easy. People went on the street. How many people were killed on Ikorodu Road in Lagos because they were demonstrating? How many people were shot? How many people were in prison? They are numberless, and they really put their life for the survival of democracy in Nigeria. We must pay a lot of respect for them. We must admire them. We must celebrate them. Also, we must celebrate the past president of Nigeria, that is Muhammadu Buhari, for recognizing June 12th as Democracy Day. After so many years of people not appreciating the importance of that day, he did it. He even proclaimed Chieftain Abiola as a president, and he gave him the highest honor on the land, GCFR. That must also be part of our history, the effort of Muhammadu Buhari on the realization of June 12th as Democracy Day.
Okay, into the conversation. And Barrister, it's been 24 years of our uninterrupted democratic experience. You did hear Senator Ogunlewe talk about the sacrifices that ordinary Nigerians made and pro-democracy activists, standing up against the mighty military to give us this democracy. But there's a new generation of Nigerians that were born post-1999. They're adults, and they haven't really seen, to use the word, dividend of democracy. So in your opinion, what's your assessment of our democratic journey so far as a country?
Yes, it is important for us to start from, the watershed, as ably described by Senator Ogunlewe. The watershed being the election won by MKO Abiola. As a matter of fact, I still feel quite nostalgic about that particular election. Reason being that I was on the other side. I mean, if there's anybody who should confirm how fair and how free that election was, it's somebody like me, because I was...
When you say the other side, where were you?
I was on NRC.
Oh, okay, NRC, yes.
The people who are...
Bashir Tofa's
Bashir Tofa's, whatever. And we were part of the people who were preparing his vice president then, Sylvester Ugo, who we thought was ably qualified, to be the vice president at that point in time, because he was an economist, and I think he has a PhD in economics and all of that. All of us were preparing him for a debate, with
Babagana
Kingibe, and how he was going to floor him, with economic terms and all of that. Of course, Babagana Kingibe was soaring above Sylvester Ugo with all his legalese and, all his technicalities and academic postulations and all of that. And he won roundly. They won us roundly. And
I believe it was the first televised national debate.
Sure. One of those debates, that was very highly contentious and then televised, of course, and all of that. So I bear witness to the fact that MK Abiola was the choice of Nigerians, whether they were Muslims, whether they were Christians, whether they came from the north or the south. As a matter of fact, you notice that even our candidate was defeated right in his own constituency,
yes,
in Kano and all of that. That will tell you how acceptable he was nationwide. And it was not such that, like the modern times where people go to court and all of that, everybody knew it was a clear win and all of that. So that is where we take our bearing from, as it were. But again, the second part of your question, or the main question, is how we have fared, all this while. You see, what I have held against the current politicians, who probably inherited what we just finished describing now, is that, you see, politics has become a self-interest centered, phenomenon or activity. Is either it is self-interest or group interest. There are hardly any people who are, even though they mouthed out, during the rallies and all of that, how much they love the people, how much they are going to provide. And in a developing world like Nigeria, it doesn't take too much to win the hearts of the people. All you need to, even if you are blindfolded, you just walk into the place and tell them that you're going to build roads for them, you make health services available for them, and all of those things that are not there, that naturally are not there, and all of that. Thereafter, you gather all the people that you won elections with, or people who were your poster boys and all of that, and begin to give them appointments. And as you giving them appointments, they think it is their own dividend of democracy. And that is the point in time, the point of departure between them and the electorate. So they are not bothered about themselves, what office they are going to. Like now, if you notice the kind of lobbying and struggling of who will become what minister, that's where the concept
sir,
of
we have a
that's where the concept of juicy ministry came. You know?
But we have you're a legal practitioner. We have a constitution,
yes.
And institutions are meant to check the excesses of human beings. Why haven't laws been able to stop politicians
Beautiful.
from
you see, there are
these
tenets,
excesses?
there are tenets of democracy without which democracy cannot be there. There must be liberty. There must be freedom of speech. There must be periodic election that will enable you remove whoever you probably mistakenly put or who deceived you, and at the end of the day, you now found out that what he's giving you is actually not what he promised you, and all of that. There must be free speech and all of that. Yes. So a conglomeration of all of this make democracy. That is why Abraham Lincoln is talking about the government of the people, for the people, by the people. But if you notice where we got it wrong, and one thing I hold against the political system now is that we are so bothered about infrastructure. A lot of people, the governors, when they want to give their scorecards, they are talking about flyovers they have built. Flying over to where? Meanwhile, the people who are going to use this flyover are hungry. They can't take the mortality rate is so high. Infant mortality rate is so high, they will not even be alive to drive on those express roads that are taking forever to complete and all of that. All of these are geared towards ingratiating the people who are participants and actors of the political scene as against the people. That is where we got it wrong.
Thank you, Barrister. Okay, I'd like to bring back Senator Ogunlewe into the conversation. Now, Senator Ogunlewe, like what Barrister said, we operate in a low trust environment. Politicians have been making promises since time immemorial, and Nigerians, the ordinary Nigerians, have, frankly speaking, lost trust in a lot of what politicians said. Now, the president, the newly sworn-in President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, this morning in his Democracy Day speech, did promise massive investments in transportation, infrastructure, education, regular power supply, healthcare, and other public utilities. If you go back in history in Nigeria, today could as well be 1983. They're the same things that Chief Obafemi Awolowo and Shehu Shagari promised. Now, the question, dear Senator, is this. How realistic are these promises looking at Nigeria's present socioeconomic conditions, and how can they contribute to Nigeria's democratic development? Hello, Senator Ogunlewe, can you kindly unmute your device if you can hear me? Okay, we seem to have some network challenges with Senator Ogunlewe, so I'll just direct that. Okay, Senator Ogunlewe is back.
Now.
Yes. Senator Ogunlewe, did you get my question, or would you like me to repeat myself? Okay, we'll try and re-establish contact.
Can I continue?
Yes, please. Did you get my question,
has been
sir?
Commercialized. Yes, I did.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Yes. Politics has been commercialized. Politics has become a business for so many people and an avenue to amass wealth at the expense of the security and welfare of the people. But Nigeria is lucky to have a person who has learned from the ropes, who has experienced whatever we are doing now, poverty, growth, struggle, and he knows what to do to make Nigerians very happy. Unfortunately for us, we are a country of people who are too self-centered, and they want to have billions at the expense of the masses. Go and check Chapter 4 of the Nigerian Constitution, Fundamental Principles of State Policy. What Nigerian government must do. Provide shelter, provide food, provide pension, provide, for the aged. Is there. What government must do? The laws, National Assembly must make sure they pass so that the welfare of the people will be the paramount responsibility of government. But that is not what is happening now. 1.3 million Nigerians are under poverty. Look at our death rate. Look at our infant mortality rate. Look at our health facilities. Which one is working now? Look at our electoral facilities. Somebody, and I'm appealing to Mr. President, you have to sit down and salvage this country. This country is a failed country already, where people cannot have 3 square meals, where you cannot send your children to public schools. When we were growing up, the best students in Nigeria attended public schools, the best. But now it is the reverse. Most Nigerians, because of the failure of government, they are sending their children to private schools. During our time, private school was not popular. Public schools were distinguished schools. Something must have gone wrong for this our country. Honestly, we were never like this. How many 40 years ago? At all. But it started to degenerate to this level because people in power were commercial oriented, profit making oriented, self-centered, how to steal money. That's all. How to commercialize politics. You go there to amass wealth, not to serve the people. Honestly, it's a strategy for this country. But I can assure Nigerians, our present president is aware of all this and is going to perform to the satisfaction of majority, the greatest good for the greatest number.
Thank you, Senator Ogunlewe, and that's the prayer of many Nigerians. Barrister Eke, Senator Ogunlewe just echoed some of the sentiments you shared earlier, that they're going there for their own personal enrichment and a water view. Now let's come to something that it's within your purview as a legal practitioner. This morning in his speech, the President emphasized the importance of the rule of law and a vibrant democracy. We saw what happened in the last administration, where the government would decide to, obey some court orders, disobey some court orders, and the judiciary that was known as the last hope of the common man didn't seem to be the last hope, because its judgments weren't final. Now, in what ways has Nigeria made progress in strengthening its legal institution and upholding democracy? And what does this administration need to do to repair the damage and the reputation that disobeying court orders had given the last administration?
Well, it is apt to note that the legal profession is a growing profession. It responds to circumstances. But you see, the legal profession is not a standalone profession. It is influenced by the circumstances, society that it lives in or it operates in. If you recall, a few years ago, the last administration invaded the houses of judges, midnight. And in short, one of the judges said he was just resting on his couch, kind of, trying to see if the malaria medication that he took will kick in before he starts writing a particular judgment. They dragged him from that place. And of course, the way the security apparatus of this country operates, the impunity, the brazenness that they operate with. Indeed, stories have it, and it's been confirmed by some of us that practice, that when they come to search you, they come with the evidence that will incriminate you. They come with the huge amount of money, huge amount of dollars. If it is cocaine, the cocaine that they are going to, charge you for, and all of that. And in that maze of activities and all of that, you're overwhelmed. You don't even know where they planted it. And they will come and see you. You see that they will show you the SBT itself in the wardrobe in your house and get you to sign and all of that. And many people do not know that that the security man that is coming to search you, first of all, must have a search warrant, properly, ordered by a court and signed by the court. And secondly, that he must subject himself to your own search first before he can enter your place. Otherwise, you cannot allow him. Yes. But these are not things that happen. Coming to the issue of rule of law, if you notice that quite a number of judgments that are against the government, it is after the judgment that you now see the Attorney General. Indeed, it is even practiced at the state level, as little
commissioners
at the regional level. The Commissioner for Justice and the Attorney General will now advise the governor whether or not to obey the court order. Meanwhile, the Constitution says the judgment of the court shall be obeyed by all authorities. All authorities. When it means all authorities, both government or subjects and all of that. But here we pick and choose. And they are studying the judgment.
I mean, these are members of the Nigerian Bar Association. Is there no way they can be sanctioned?
When people talk about independence of the judiciary or independence of the three arms of government, I usually qualify it with independence and interdependence. In the sense that a judge can make his order, give a judgment, either restraining you from doing or compelling you to do a thing. That is where it stops. He only owns the pen with which he wrote the judgment.
He can't enforce.
It is now left for the executive to go and enforce. The executive part of the part of the executive that enforces is the police, which is under the executive. So it is like making a judgment to arrest the president. You are making a judgment for purposes of academics. It doesn't.
I mean, even the
EFCC
chairman, there's been arrest warrants served on his person,
and he simply ignored them. And in short, some ministers were even ignoring the members of House of Representatives when they summoned them and all of that. What would the House of Representatives do? It is to protest to the president, to give them police, to be able to either, if it is a bench warrant or whatever it is, to arrest this particular minister. What if the president chooses not to, and all of that? So these are what we call rashes of democracy. The glitches that democracy comes with and all of that. That it will take a person who says, look, I'm going to do well. It's just like what Senator Ogunlewe was talking about, with regard to this time around, that there is somebody who understands the rope and who has learned the rope that is going to be in charge and all of that. If you notice the manifestos of all the governors, at least the foremost candidates in the last election, Atiku, Peter Obi, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, if you take your time and decouple the manifestos, they are saying the same thing. It's just like I said quite recently, that this fuel subsidy, which President Tinubu removed, he removed it on behalf of the other contestants, because all of them,
exactly, it was part of their
it was part of their manifestos. So the only thing that we are asking for, and where I'm going to anchor this thing, is the will, political will to
follow through promises.
Political will to do. For Bola Tinubu to say, look, if this is the ruling of the court, what we are is we're in a democracy, and rule of law must prevail. Then it means that you people must obey it. We can appeal it if it's appealable, if it's not a judgment that is coming from the Supreme Court. And otherwise, it is something we must obey. That is what democracy comes with.
Thank you, Barrister. Okay, now back to you, Senator Ogunlewe. Just quickly before we go on a quick break, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu this morning, in his Democracy Day speech, did refer to the recent elections as a testament to Nigeria's democratic journey. We know that as we speak, there's a presidential election petition tribunal that is ongoing contesting his elections. How would you assess the state of Nigerian democracy based on the conduct of the last election?
Well, we have come a long way. Gradually, we are getting things right. But for the slight deficiency of INEC, we would have gotten it a lot better. But this transmission of result. I don't know the reason why they didn't do so. It shouldn't have affected the outcome of the election at all. But for one reason or the other, they played into the hands of the opposition, and that is the reason why we are where we are now. It would have been necessary because everything went on very well, and the beavers were very, very, well prevented. Too many people are being accredited over the number of registered voters. Once they were able to limit that, it remains transmission of the what actually happened. They couldn't a little bit of itches that we had in the last election. Otherwise, to my mind, it was an extremely perfect and well conducted election. But for that little mistake, which I don't know why it happened, honestly.
Thank you very much, Senator Ogunlewe. This is Politics Headquarters on New Central Television. I was still discussing Democracy Day and Nigeria's democratic journey since 1999. And I have with me Barrister George Eke and also Senator Adeshe Ogunlewe to discuss this issue. We'll go on a quick break, and when we come back, we'll start looking at solutions to fixing the myriad of problems bedeviling Nigeria. Do stay with us. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to Politics HQ and New Central Television, and we're discussing Nigeria's democratic journey as today, June 12, marks the country's Democracy Day. I have with me in the studio Barrister George Eke, and I also have joining us via Zoom from the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, former Minister, Senator Adeshe Ogunlewe. Now, Barrister Eke, you're welcome back. Before we went to the break, I posed a question to Senator Ogunlewe and asked him for his assessment on the last election that brought in President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I do recall when former President Yar'Adua came in, he did say that, look, the last elections that brought me into power were deeply flawed, and we started seeing reforms in the electoral system. Now, what's your assessment of these past elections? And also, what are because in the course of this program, we've looked at, we've gone back memory lane, we've seen where we went wrong and all of that. I also want to ask you what you think the main challenges or obstacles that Nigeria still faces in consolidating its democratic gains since 1999.
Yeah, first of all, I'll start by disagreeing, with most distinguished senator when he made the remark that if not for little, problems, that it was a perfect election, and his word was perfect. In short, I can say that election did not come anywhere close to being perfect.
And your reasons are?
And another point to make here is that those were not minor problems. They are not minor problems. If there were minor problems, we wouldn't be in court. In short, the whole country would, in short, if anything, the swearing in of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has lowered the tension. If you notice, before now, it was almost like the country was going to explode and all of that. But because of the character of those people who contested the election with him, who have been quite gentlemanly. And in any case, what happens in democracy is that if you are aggrieved, you go to court. Even though it's been abused, the thing now has some kind of connotation of almost mockery, is go to court. But the proper thing to do is go to court. Go and seek redress there, and hoping that the court, will look at your case dispassionately and give you the distance. But it was not anything close to perfect, as being said by Senator Ogunlewe. But the point I'm also going to make here, which probably will agree with his position slightly, is that the introduction of the beavers machine significantly reduced the fraud that all of us participate in and that we know politics for. Because you see, in a typical polling station, it is the number of people that are captured by the beavers machine that can vote or can be accounted for. Before this time around, it used to be if you finish voting, whatever remains of the ballot papers, all you need to do is just get whoever is representing the other lesser political parties, because some of these people, if you notice, some people just contest for the sake of contesting. Nationally, they can get just 2,000 votes and all of that. So they are messing up the ballot papers. So they have, some of them have agents. Once you call the agent may not even know who his principal is, and try to get him to cooperate. You get somebody to thumbprint. That's what politicians used to do, to thumbprint the rest of the ballot papers.
And they give.
But you see, with the introduction of the beavers, you cannot, once it is one vote, I'm talking about one vote higher than what was captured from case, that particular polling booth will be nullified. So that was a very good check. So if you now notice, the kind of rigging that takes place now is they can take your vote and give to me, but it must be within the beavers recorded numbers and all of that. So that is, the introduction of that beavers machine was a very huge check on the politicians whose business is how to rig election, because they can't even deal with a situation where they cannot use the rest of the ballot papers. But that was a check. It was a ceiling for them.
What went wrong with that election, in your own opinion? Where are the flaws?
You see, I am not in a position to say, even though I have my own opinion with regard to what went wrong, we can begin to talk about
what areas could we have improved on?
When the judgment comes, when the judgment comes out, we can help INEC to improve. That is even part of why I'm disagreeing with Senator Ogunlewe, so that we can get INEC to know that they have a job to do. They have a job. But the time we now say that the election came close to perfect, it means that we are scoring them very high, and I can't score them high with what I saw, because I was also a participant in that election.
Thank you, Barrister. Okay. Now, Senator Ogunlewe, you did mention earlier during this the course of our discussion this evening that you remembered education back 30, 40 years ago, that private schools were on the fringe, and government schools produced very quality graduates and upright citizens. Now, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu this morning in his democracy speech mentioned that education was a key area of investment with specific measures. So my question to you, sir, is what specific measures can be taken to enhance the quality of education in Nigeria? If you talk to business owners, they will tell you how much they sweat in order to get quality graduates, and they are not in the business of retraining. Businesses are opened to make profit. So it shows the depth in education. So how can we promote access? How can he promote access to education for all, address the existing disparities in educational opportunities?
We just return to where we were when we were younger. It means during Jakonde's period, Awolowo's period, provision of educational materials to every Nigerian child, primary and secondary, must be the exclusive responsibility of government. No Nigerian child should be out of school because they cannot provide educational materials, books, textbooks, writing materials, school uniform, school shoes, school canvas, school food must be the responsibility of government. That is when a child belongs to your country. A child that suffers because his parents cannot afford to send that child to school, dropped out. That country is an irresponsible country. The leadership are irresponsible because Under our constitution, the child have a right to education, and they must be given that right. And we must address it. If not, our educational system has collapsed. We have 20 million, 22 million children out of school. It is a disgrace to our nation. How can we be saying we are a nation and 22 million children are out of school and we are proud as a nation? What is our value if you cannot send ordinary children to school? It is a priority. Every Nigerian child must return to school at the expense of government at all costs. Can you imagine 1.5 billion students will sit for JAM? The space available is not up to 300,000. So about over 1 million children, school who participated in that exam cannot have access to tertiary education. So they have to leave the country, go to Togo, go to Benin Republic, go to Sudan, go to Ukraine, go to Ghana. The amount of money we spend in educating our children out of Nigeria is so huge that if we invest that money in our own educational system, it will be a thing of pride for us. Can you ever believe that 350,000 students apply to read medical sciences in Nigeria? No space for them. If Nigeria can produce 350,000 medical personnel in every year, the world will listen to us because we will rule the world. This is what China used. This is what India used to their advantage. Educating their citizens and selling them to the world. Diaspora remittance of India every year is $96 billion. This is far, far more than all our budget in a year. Diaspora remittance. And we have the people that could be trained and exported to the world, and they bring a lot of money back to Nigeria. Nigeria are one of the most brilliant people ever to live in this world. Just give them the opportunity for education, and you'll be surprised what we are going to get. But what do we have? Nigerian child means nothing to the Nigerian government. It's a pity.
Quite sad and very humbling analysis there from Senator Ogunlewe. Now, President Buhari, beg your pardon, President Tinubu did talk about the beauty of democracy this morning. And hearing Senator Ogunlewe reveal all those statistics is quite humbling, but there seems to be no sense of urgency amongst the political class to address these issues, these monumental problems. He just x-rayed education. If you go to judiciary, if you go to the health sector, if you go to basically any sector in Nigeria, even golden goods, petroleum sector it's suffering from one sort of malaise or the other. What do we need to do to turn our story, to turn this momentum around and begin to see progress as a nation?
You see, I need to add to what the distinguished senator said, about education. There are two dimensions to it. One is that lack of education will increase the insecurity in Nigeria. That's one area. It's a
more expensive problem to have.
That's one area. And a very educated person that has a job and has something to do and all of that will not be part of the people who are either doing kidnapping or trying to, shoot their way to as unknown gunmen or whatever. So education quells it. Secondly, what again Senator Ogunlewe did not take cognizance of, even though he alluded to it, is that because of the level of poor facilities in our educational system, what we are now suffering from is no longer brain drain. Brain drain used to be what he probably referred to as what India does, and they make remittances,
yes,
back to their country. We have moved from brain drain to brain desertification. Desertification to such an extent that a typical young graduate fits exactly into that mold of what you said an employer is finding difficult.
Oh, yes.
I am an employer, and there are people who are in my employment that I need to help write memos. Just dear such and such person.
And
we need to do this.
secondary school education can take care of this.
Beautiful. I think
yes.
You learn all your English at the secondary school. That's what I used to tell my friends, in the university. I said, what secondary school did you go to? Because you hardly learn any new lexics and structure or whatever at the university level. It is all taught at the secondary school level. So we need to strengthen the educational system of secondary school. And I buy that idea. That make it very attractive. Recruit good teachers. Remunerate them properly. Give them good remuneration. And you will see that they will bring out their best and all of that. And train. There was a day I drove past, a place in Atlanta. And they told me that it is a primary school. And the kind of cars I saw parked at the car park, the Lexuses of this world, all the Jeeps that every typical every typical Nigerian is dreaming to have. Teachers are driving those cars and all of that, and they're happy with their job. Once a teacher is happy with his job, he will bring out the best. And don't recruit anybody based on political consideration, because I noticed that some of us as politicians, once in a while you hear, that the governor has sent, ask you to do a list of people to be recruited. All of a sudden, you recruit your house help. You find another person to recruit and they give all those. And
it happens across board, not just in the education sector. Yes.
These are people who do not have any knowledge, not to talk of impacting any, and all of that. So these are places we can. Then we now go to health. If you notice the volume of medical tourism that is taking place now, we are losing so much on education. Most people have their children in Ghana. As little as Ghana is, we're not even talking about Canada, because there's been a huge exodus, to Canada. But I'm talking about Ghana, talking about Benin Republic and all of that. What is it that they are capable of doing that we cannot do? Corruption is the issue.
Thank you, Barrister. Okay, now, Senator Ogunlewe, as we wrap up, you've served Nigeria in different capacity, and quite a lot of young people are not really happy and they've lost hope. That's why I remember back in the 80s, there was this national orientation jingle about Andrew, don't check out. So we're in another phase of Nigerians checking out in their numbers. What's your message to young Nigerians that seem to have lost hope in the political class? What should they look up to? And are you optimistic about the future as we celebrate Democracy Day today? In conclusion.
My message is not to Nigerian citizens. My message is to Nigerian government. Formulate policy that will assist Nigerian youth to survive. What do they have abroad that we don't have? Credit facilities. Create as many credit banks to give us credit, 2,000 naira, 10,000 naira, when you need and you are in trouble. And then you pay in another 10 years once you have employment. Give us mortgage. Give us insurance. These are the institutions they have abroad that we don't appreciate here. No Nigerian can survive on their salary without subvention from somewhere. It is not 26% credit facilities. Credit facilities that is manageable for a young Nigerian. Mortgage. You don't need to go and steal to buy a house. Once you have institutions that are mortgage banks must be multiplied in so many local governments. Credit card companies must exist in every local government so that if you need 50,000, you can go to a credit bank and they will give you, you pay in another 2 years. Those are the things that exist. Houses, you can pay your rent through your mortgage, your insurance. You have very, very good insurance companies. When you have a problem in your home, maybe you have blockage, your electricity is bad, your furniture is bad, the insurance company will take it over. These are the institutions we don't honor and we don't cherish at all. And these are the institutions that allow people abroad to survive. This must be brought back to Nigeria so that a Nigerian middle-aged person can have access to credit, can have access to mortgage, can have access to insurance. good education, give their children education free at the expense of the state, so that our parents, when you see them selling anything on the roadside, the total value of what they are selling is not 2,000 naira or 3,000 naira. When I see them, I say, how can these people survive sending their children to school? In some cases, you even find the child beside the mother that is selling. How can a country survive this way when the children are on the road selling pure water, selling sweet, selling all these things? When I see a small child on the road selling, I imagine my own child, can he do this one? But Nigerians, we don't care. We must care for our children,
okay,
because they are our future. Thank you very much.
On that beautiful note, I would like to say we indeed need to care for our children, because they are indeed the future. Thank you so much, distinguished Senator Seye Ogunlewe, for joining us on today's conversation. And we do pray and hope for a better country. And I'd also like to say thank you to you, Barrister George Eke. Thanks for honoring our invitation. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you.
It's my pleasure.
Okay, it's time for me to give you something to chew on after this timeout.